Breaking, responders just revealed sickening discovery in ditch outside of Texas church shooting. It's been just over 24 hours since the world was reminded once again of the reality that you're not safe anywhere, even in the most sacred places such as a church. When the faithful in a small town in Texas walked into the modest building to worship that fall afternoon, they didn't think they would soon be meeting the God they came to worship. Their lives ended there in an instant by a crazed lunatic who didn't like their religion. The media seems all too willing to blame the gun and not the shooter, but as the investigation into this horrific incident unfolds, certain details are coming out that's causing leftists everyone to collectively freak out. Liberals are notorious for never letting a crisis go to waste, and this deadly attack is no different. Within minutes, former President Barack Obama used the bodies of these 26 victims as ploys to push gun control. He expressed fake sorrow for the lives lost, which was clear since in the same sentence he politicized the tragedy in a push for his gun control agenda. USA News Flash reported of his response that was about as warm and fuzzy as a cactus and riddled with his anti-Second Amendment rhetoric that wouldn't have stopped the shooter from committing his crime. Perhaps the lowest thing that someone can do in times of crisis is use a shooting incident in which people lost their lives to their political advantage against another person. That was the case with former President Barack Obama, who used the shooting incident that took place this Sunday morning during a church service in Texas to call for fewer guns. Obama started out saying, "We grieve with all the families in Sutherland Springs harmed by this act of hatred, and we'll stand with the survivors as they recover," before explaining how the American people should ask God for the wisdom to ask what concrete steps we can take to reduce the violence and weaponry in our midst. Despite what the former president wants to blame this on, the problem lies within the person and the hate that fueled him into ambushing faithful worshippers. Devin Kelly probably thought he was going down in infamy as a mass murderer when he pulled the gun on himself as a last resort. In fact, he went down as the coward he really is, as what was proven by heroes there who watched him end his life and described what they saw in the ditch that will always stick with them. CBS reports that the suspect called his father after this shooting happened and apparently before he shot himself. After hanging up with his dad, he ended his life, and the heroes who had courageously cornered him into this position he took himself out of, said Kelly died like a dog in a ditch. According to InfoWars, it's an appropriate description and the humiliating way he left this world after taking 26 innocent Christians out of it first. What's of further importance is that Kelly, who was dishonorably discharged from the Air Force, after being convicted of beating his wife and child, was able to obtain a gun despite the law preventing him from doing so. It was later discovered that this was because the Air Force never turned in the paperwork about his discharge that would have sent off a red flag in his background check. He was checked when he bought the gun and passed for this reason. The Air Force is investigating why it didn't send Devin Kelly's court-martial and conviction for domestic violence to the FBI database used to approve gun buyers. Dallas News reported, if the database had included information about Kelly's criminal record, the man responsible for gunning down 26 people in a Texas church would have not been allowed to purchase a gun from a store. Federal law prohibited him from buying or possessing firearms after this conviction, Ann Stefanek, an Air Force spokeswoman, said in a statement. The report added, the Air Force has asked the Defense Department's Inspector General to investigate the lapse. Kelly pled guilty in 2012 to beating his first wife and assaulting his stepson with a force likely to produce death or grievous bodily harm, according to records released by the Air Force. He received a bad conduct discharge in 2014 after he served a year in a military brig near San Diego, California. Dallas News explains more about how the mass murderer was able to get away with obtaining so many weapons under the radar. Officials at the base where he was stationed and was convicted, Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, should have sent his record to the FBI's criminal history database, Stefanek said. It feeds the national database gun sellers use to vet customers. After his discharge, Kelly bought 4 guns, 3 of which were recovered from the crime scene in Sutherland Springs, where he opened fire on the First Baptist Church. He appears to have passed all the checks required of gun purchasers. There was no disqualifying information entered into the database, Fred Milanovsky, special agent in charge of the Houston Division of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, said earlier Monday. Gun sellers forward a potential buyer's name and paperwork to the FBI's National Instant Criminal Background System, also known as NICS. The system checks state and federal criminal histories. If the would-be buyer's application, which includes a fingerprint check, produces any disqualifying information, the sale would be delayed to give the FBI more time to investigate. If the agency confirmed the disqualifying information, the purchase would be denied. All branches of the military are supposed to report convictions and dishonorable discharges to the FBI to include in the database. While Kelly's bad conduct discharge would not have banned him from owning a gun, his conviction while serving should have, the Air Force said. One official with knowledge of how the database system works told the Dallas Morning News that the military has a history of not disclosing conviction information to the FBI. That information is used not only by law enforcement but by health and child care licensing agencies. If you spend 12 months in jail or prison for a criminal offense that is nowhere to be found in state or FBI records, what is anybody supposed to do? He said. Both the military conviction and a bad conduct discharge should have prevented the 26-year-old Kelly from getting a security guard license in Texas. But the Texas Department of Public Safety approved his license last summer. If Kelly had disclosed he had been in the military, the agency would have asked him for his discharge paperwork that would have shown his bad conduct discharge. The problem isn't the law. It's the one who pulled the trigger who probably would have found a way to get his weapons to commit his crime by any means possible. Most mass murders aren't committed with legally obtained weapons, and this is another example of that.